Hi guys, welcome to part 2 of my Roja Parfums Oud collection review. If you are new here and you haven't seen the first part, then I basically decided to go through all of the Roja Parfums Oud fragrances that I have access to. So this includes like full bottles and samples that I have in my collection. And I wanted to do a review to compare all of them and see exactly what was different about each one. So in part 1, I covered 4 fragrances. We went through Amber Oud, Enigma Oud, Musk Oud, and the original Oud. And in part 2, we're going to go through another 5 oud fragrances. Roja Parfums, of course, does have other oud fragrances as well in their collection, but I don't have access to them. I don't have samples and I don't have full bottles, so I'm not able to include those in my review. Please do note that this review is solely based on the fragrances I actually have access to and not the entire Roja Parfums oud collection. Today we are going to go through 5 fragrances. One of them is the oud from the Pierre de Velay collection. We've got Qatar oud. And then we've got 3 samples from the discovery set left to kind of go through in today's video. If you haven't watched part 1 of this 2-part video, then please do go back to my YouTube channel and watch part 1, just so you can get the full picture of everything that we're talking about in this review. And also, if you like content like this and reviews like this, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button and follow my channel and my Instagram page for more. So in part 2, we are going to start off with Oman Oud, which is part of the Middle East Oud collection. Oman Oud is another stunning fragrance and leans more fresh, woody, spicy with a hint of sweetness along with the Roja Oud DNA. So Oman Oud isn't like sensual like the other ones that I've talked about. And also, if you want to know what I mean by Roja Oud DNA, then you definitely need to watch part 1 and you need to specifically see the bit where I'm talking about the original Oud, because you will find out what I mean by Roja Oud DNA. The Oman Oud, I do feel like people will think that it's slightly more masculine because of the spicy woody combination. And to be honest, I feel like that sometimes as well. So I'm glad that I didn't buy this one as a full bottle, because for me personally, it's not something that I would wear. But it projects incredibly well, possibly the best out of the whole collection. I do think that it's the spices in this fragrance which kind of boost that projection. So in the opening, I definitely get spices, the birch, the Gurjan balsam as well, that we've talked about before in a previous video. So if you want to know what Gurjan balsam is, I can link that video that I've talked about, that note specifically, in the description box below, just so you can understand what Gurjan balsam is. I also get some cedar and some musk with this, along with the softness of the raspberry and the rose, and the freshness of the grapefruit and the orange. So already, like in the opening, there's just so much complexity in Oman Oud. And everything that I just said comes out like at different times, but within the first 2 hours. And there's also a slight hint of smokiness to this, which is quite fitting because Oman is obviously known for frankincense. So it makes sense to have like some frankincense in a Oman Oud fragrance. So the dry down of Oman Oud is then a woody sandalwood oud, lightly musky finish, with some of those fresh notes from the start as well remaining to the end. It does have some of that Roja Oud DNA in this fragrance, but it is still quite different to the others. And the performance and the projection of this, as I said, are just incredible, even better than Amber Oud in my opinion. And to be honest, when I sampled all of them, I do think that it was one of the best performing and projecting fragrance. Then next, we're going to move on to Sweetie Oud. So Sweetie Oud is a very unique fragrance. Like in the opening, it feels like a really good quality, luxurious biscuit. So Sweetie Oud, I can tell you now, is definitely a gourmand style fragrance. So along with that biscuit feel, I was kind of getting like bergamot, some balsamic notes as well, some spices and some woodiness. Sweetie Oud is another complex fragrance. There's just so much going on and it's difficult to detect exactly what you're smelling. But that biscuit feel from the start is definitely quite obvious. So you can tell from the start that it's a gourmand fragrance, but there's just so much that happens like in the first hour. But it's a very complex Sweetie Oud. Then afterwards, you start to get like some frankincense, which makes the scent smoky, and that woodiness and that biscuit feel kind of remain. I'm going to keep saying biscuit feel because it literally smelled like a biscuit to me. I'm talking about like buttery biscuits. I'm talking about like nutty style biscuits, like the really luxurious nutty biscuits that you get in Harrods. Personally, I didn't find this to be a sweet fragrance as such. Like I didn't get any sweetness from it, if that makes sense. Like no sugar, no sweetness, no honey, nothing like that. It just felt like a gourmand fragrance. The dry down of Sweetie Oud is then a woody patchouli scent with labdanum. So I definitely feel that Sweetie Oud is more gourmand than sweet. And actually, when you check the description of the scent on Roja Parfums' website, this is exactly what they wanted to do. So if that's what they wanted to do, then they definitely did an excellent job at making a gourmand fragrance. But don't judge the fragrance and expect to find something sweet, or not want to try it because you think it's going to be like an overly sweet fragrance, because it definitely isn't. And unfortunately, out of the collection that I'm talking about in part one and part two, Sweetie Oud was my least favorite. The next we have got the UAE slash United Arab Emirates Oud. Now this one is one of my absolute favorites. It's a perfect match of what exactly the UAE smells like. When you go to the UAE, you will find this smell naturally everywhere. The most important thing to find out is what makes this different to the original oud, because both are based around rose oud. So this one, United Arab Emirates oud, is fresh and spicy as opposed to green, which is what you'll find in the original oud. Also, the UAE oud is slightly stronger, whereas the original oud is softer than this. However, that being said, the original oud has more oud and rose, as it comes across more darker and woody and slightly animalic, whereas UAE oud focuses more on the musk and the labdanum. And I wouldn't call the UAE one animalic, not as animalic as the original oud anyway. So I'm definitely glad that there's a difference between the two, otherwise there would be no point. But in my opinion, this is definitely a perfect representation of what the UAE smells like. This is spicy, fresh, with oud and rose, musk and labdanum, which is like the most perfect combination. And this one has fantastic projection as well. So in the dry down of UAE oud, along with the musk and labdanum, the rose and the soft oud, you also get some patchouli and some cypriol oil. This doesn't have saffron like the others, but it remains quite luxurious and classy. And as I said, this is definitely one of my favorites. Easy to wear, easy to like, easy to get noticed, and I don't think that anybody would be disappointed by this fragrance. Very similar to Amber Oud. And of course, when it comes to memories and feelings attached, this fragrance does remind me of my childhood quite a lot. So definitely, I love this fragrance and I love the way it makes me feel. The final one we have from the Middle Eastern collection is Qatar Oud. So Qatar Oud is a stunning, sweet, amber, lightly spicy fragrance. It opens with fruity notes like peach and pear, giving a very refreshing touch along with citruses, sweetness, rose, and this combination is so stunning and different compared to the other two. So when you compare the three Middle Eastern fragrances, Qatar Oud is like the sweet one, UAE one is like the soft one, I would say, and then the Oman one is like the darker one. Of course, in the Middle Eastern collection, they did have other fragrances as well, like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait. I think they had a Bahrain as well, but they're not available in the UK, and I don't think Roja Parfums has them available either. But you might be able to find them in certain Middle Eastern countries, depending on the retailer. So back to Qatar Oud. Qatar Oud represents luxury and royalty, just like what Qatar is basically. This one also has saffron from start to finish, so that just adds to the beauty, because I personally love saffron in fragrances. I think it just adds like a touch of beauty to any fragrance that it's in. After about 10 minutes of first spraying, you start to get a good dose of violet in the mix. After about an hour, you start to get some orris, some birch, and some woody notes. The projection of this one as well is just incredible. And to be honest, I haven't come across a Roja fragrance that doesn't have incredible projection and performance anyway. So 2 hours later, then once you've sprayed Qatar Oud, you start to get some musk along with the woody notes. You start to get labdanum, and you've still got the saffron and the woody notes, and also some sandalwood. The way you think it's going to dry down like a dark woody scent, it doesn't. It dries down musky, woody with that Roja Oud DNA, so it becomes soft and sensual and seriously beautiful. So this one has a similar performance to the other two as well, but in terms of my favorite from the UAE, Oman, and Qatar Oud, UAE is my typical type of scent, so I'm not going to include that in this list, like for my favorites, because automatically I would lean towards UAE anyway. If I had to choose between Qatar and Oman, I would definitely prefer Qatar over Oman, just because it's more sensual and it has that sweetness as well. And I do feel like Oman Oud leans slightly more masculine. So I'm glad that we ended up getting a full bottle of Qatar Oud instead of Oman. And if I get UAE Oud in the future, that's not going to be a disappointment anyway. I'll definitely like that. So yeah, that is what Qatar Oud is about. So Qatar Oud is like more sweet, ambery oud, as opposed to Oman Oud, which is slightly more spicy and woody and a little bit more masculine. Then finally, we have got the Oud. It's actually called the Oud from the Pierre de Velay collection. So this is a very different collection to the Oud collection. The Oud collection is like Roger Parfums, whereas this one from the Pierre de Velay collection is only available in the Roger Parfums perfumery on the sixth floor in Harrods. So you won't find this in the Roger Parfums boutique. I don't think you will, because this, although it's been created by Roger Dove, it's a very special collection which you'll only find in their perfumery. So what is different about the this one basically from the Pierre de Velay collection? So the oud from the Pierre de Velay collection opens fresh with citrus and musky notes, and it has some beautiful florals as well. Minutes later, then the oud starts to like blend in. So the florals that I get on my skin with this one are mainly ylang ylang and rose. I don't really get jasmine from this on my skin. You then start to get some woody notes with an equal balance of patchouli, some spices, some smoky hints, some saffron, and some rose. So it quickly changes, and that's why I call this one the complex oud. In terms of projection, this one is also amazing. It's quite strong at first, but it does project for a really long time. And that's based off like just 4 sprays. Overspraying this fragrance wouldn't work because, as I said, it is quite strong. The dry down of the oud from the Pierre de Velay collection is then a woody, smoky scent. The performance of this is also incredible. Like it lasts beyond 10 to 12 hours. And even after being washed off, you can still smell it on your skin. Although it doesn't project, which is expected, obviously. Once you've washed it off, it's not going to project. But you can definitely smell it directly on your skin. And it's just stunning. In the dry down as well, along with like the woody smokiness, you start to get a bit of musk in it as well, which makes it a little bit similar to UAE oud. Smokiness kind of gives it that edge, I think. Yeah, the oud from the Pierre de Velay collection is also a complex fragrance, along with Oman oud and Sweetie oud, which are other complex fragrances. I think these 3 were the most complex out of all of the ones I've talked about in part 1 and part 2. As I said, this one, the oud from the Pierre de Velay collection, you'll only find it on the 6th floor in Harrods in the Roger Parfums perfumery. So that is my review of the Roger Parfums oud collection that I have access to. So there are differences between all of the fragrances, but there is that similarity between most of them, which is that Roger Oud DNA, which comes from the original oud that was created first. I do hope you found part 1 and part 2 useful to kind of give you an understanding of what each fragrance is about, just so you can also try to understand what fragrance you want to try first. I don't recommend blind buying anything ever, so definitely try out the ones that sound the most interesting to you. And if you have any questions which I haven't covered off in part 1 or part 2, then you can let me know in the comments box below. Definitely watch part 1 if you haven't already. I hope that you are able to find something that you like. I do have some interesting content coming up for you guys, so definitely stay tuned and do hit the subscribe button if you haven't already so you can see what I've got coming up next. Thank you all for your continued support, for those of you that have subscribed and continue to watch my videos and like them and comment on them and continue to support me. I always appreciate like every comment, every like, every view that I get, so definitely thank you, and do stay tuned, and I will see you guys soon.